Good morning, everybody. On January 22, this date in 1917, Woodrow Wilson stood before a joint session of Congress and said that World War I should be finished with a peace without victory. Now, we were not fighting in the war yet, but in Europe, where millions had died, this would be a tough sell. The 1800s were full of technological innovation. Here's a steam locomotive from 1825, and it seemed like there was always something new being invented. The telegraph, at least Morse's telegraph, came out in 1844. People were captivated by the idea of instant news and being able to communicate with places that are far away. When Alfred Nobel invented dynamite, he saw it as a great aid to road builders and people doing heavy construction. Didn't really see it as a weapon, but it sure became one. In 1851, the English hosted the Great Exhibition, showcasing a lot of technological advances of the world. People were fascinated by that. And Germany was known as the best nation for chemicals, the chemical industry. Bayer, for instance, we associate that with the aspirin that came out in 1899. It was one of the great chemical companies in Germany, and years later, Bayer combined with other companies to form IG Farben, who made the poison gas that the Nazis used. So the German chemical industry leaders, but it came up with the poison gas of World War I. Here's the Maxim. Here's Mr. Maxim with his machine gun, the first modern machine gun, arguably. And this will become such a huge factor in World War I, particularly because armies on the offense were just getting mowed down right and left by armies using the machine gun to defend. Here's our submarine, the Holland, 1898. Again, another example of technological advancement with a war application. In 1903, the Wright brothers made their famous flight. Who knew that the airplane would be a war weapon? Kind of got started in World War I, but of course much bigger in World War II. In 1906, England came out with the Dreadnought. This was arguably the first modern battleship. This made Germany nervous. An arms race started up between the two countries, and a lot of tension in Europe. And even before the Dreadnought came out, the nations of the world realized they needed to meet to try to come up with some roadmap or blueprint for trying to keep the peace. So they met at The Hague Conventions, 1899, and then another one in 1907, the year after the Dreadnought came out. Is peace possible indefinitely? Well, 1914, Europe was a tinderbox. Here's the alliances: Britain, France, and Russia against Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Turkey. Everybody's tense, and the spark comes in June 1914 when a Serbian shot the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, the Archduke. Alliances kicked in, and in August 1914, World War I started in the West when Germany invaded France via Belgium. And note, everybody, that this is a real war of movement. In those early months of World War I, the trench warfare doesn't get set up yet. And in Christmas 1914, there was actually a pause known as the Christmas truce. Here's a German and a Brit sharing a cigarette. But that idea of brothers fighting and sort of a camaraderie disappears eventually with the huge casualties. Here's a photo from the Battle of the Somme in 1916, but millions and millions of dead soldiers. So rather than create cars, the industrial nations are creating corpses, industrial killing. In 1916, the Lusitania was sunk by a German U-boat, and Americans died. And President Wilson says we're going to stay out of World War I, or the Great Wars they called it. And here's our event, January 22, 1917. He was before a joint session of Congress and called for peace without victory, in other words, peace without revenge. He wanted the nations of the world to work together, but the Germans, particularly the British and the French, they didn't want to hear this. They had paid so much in blood and treasure. And 4 months later, we went to war. April 1917. So what will happen to Wilson's plans for world peace.